And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
Citadel baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings on a good Tuesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app. That is available for free. Download it into your phone. You can watch it and listen to our program daily in its entirety, beginning at noon, ending at 2 p.m. If you are watching to the right of your screen, that is me, JB. I am in the home studio. To the left, that is Darren Goldwater. He is in his home studio. And together for the next couple of hours, we're going to pack as much information as we possibly can to entertain you on what is a gorgeous afternoon. Hopefully, many of you aren't stuck inside in an office or in a car or wherever watching this show. Hopefully, you're able to just carry it with you and listen while you're out moseying around a park or on a boat or God knows where. But it is slap beautiful here in the low country of South Carolina and, of course, all across the state as well. Follow us on social media at JB and Goldwater and individually at Sports Media JB at Darren Goldwater. Our text line is available, 843-321-8893. If you'd like to send us a comment, question, concern, go for it. But, Darren, it's going to be pretty full. Starting here in just a little bit, we do have Skylar Meade, the pitching coach for the Gamecocks, set to join us in 7 minutes. And the Carolina baseball team will be in town tomorrow night, in town here in the low country, to play the Citadel as they start a 4-game road stretch this week. It will conclude in Austin, Texas, with a 3-game series starting Friday. So we're going to talk to Skylar about those 4 games. We're going to look back at a marvelous pitching performance by his team this weekend, and they allowed 1 run, in which they allowed 1 run in 27 innings. We'll get his thoughts on that. We do have Grace Raynor checking in at 12:30 today. DJ Byu and Gonzaga set to start the 2021 fall season as the quarterback at Clemson. Dabo Sweeney has now said that he is a combination of Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. So we're going to get her thoughts on that. We'll talk to her about the injury report. Tony Elliott, his candidness about being a head coach. What about C.J. Spiller? How's he doing up there? And so on and so forth. So that'll be a fun conversation in just a little while. We've got Gene Sapakoff at 1:30. I'm going to talk to him about Frank Martin and a bunch of fun stuff. I've got a fun little game to play with him. Darren, this is a really interesting – you have to ask it in context because sports are different. But what is right now the better program, Clemson football or Carolina women's basketball?
Oh, Clemson football, but we'll tweak how you're going to ask it, I'm sure, and we'll see how the different ways we can ask it will, I guess, affect how Sapakoff answers it.
Well, and that's exactly right. It's all about how you ask that question, right? That's crucial,
right? I mean, because if you're going to put any type of boundaries on it, then it can change the way I answer it. But just on the surface, what's the better program right now? Is it South Carolina women's basketball or Clemson football? I have to go Clemson football, right? I mean, they're the ones who have been regularly in not just the NCAA tournament, right? Regularly in the Final Four, regularly in at least mention for that championship game. It is a bigger sport. It is a bigger roster. So I'm going Clemson football right now.
Okay, that's a good pick. I don't disagree. We'll see what Gene thinks here in just a little while. We are going to talk about Les Miles today. We'll get to Nick Saban and Kirby Smart that we didn't get to yesterday as well. Obviously, Les Miles now fired at Kansas because of something that happened at LSU, but Kansas in the contract had the right to fire Les Miles, and we'll explain all that in just a little while. There were some tickets punched yesterday. I want to make sure we mention those real quick, and then I want to hit on Frank Martin before we get to Skylar Meade. But App State, they won the Sun Belt yesterday, Darren. First NCAA tournament appearance since 2000. Only their third ever, though. Of course, they upset top-seeded Georgia State to win the Sun Belt yesterday. So congratulations to the Mountaineers Hoops program. UNC Greensboro headed back to the dance. This is their fourth overall, but it's their second in just 4 years. They were there in 2018. They actually almost upset Gonzaga. Yep. In that tournament the year after South Carolina lost to Gonzaga in the Final Four, as a matter of fact. And so Wes Miller's got him back there, and that's an interesting conversation to have. I would rather have your take on this than about anybody's, because you know the SoCon so well. But here's a guy, some are surprised he's actually still at UNC Greensboro, and he might not be for long at the end of this season. Over the last 5 years, Darren, he's 125 and 42. And in that stretch, this is now his second NCAA tournament appearance, and he's been to 2 NITs. He's probably a hot young name in coaching. I'm anxious to see if he stays there.
He is a hot young name. He has already turned down offers in the past. I'm not going to go into that, but there were multiple, certainly one that I'm certain of, high jobs, Power 5 jobs that have come after him, and he has turned them down. I had an interesting conversation yesterday about the future of Wes Miller and where he may end up and where some rumors are starting to swirl. I'll leave that there. But he is a favored son of Chapel Hill and of Roy Williams. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that Wes Miller, prior to this 5-year run, was about to get fired. He was on as hot a seat as you can be on in the Southern Conference because it just wasn't working. When he was hired, he was one of, if not the youngest head coaches at the Division I level. Took him a little while to figure it out. He had a great relationship with the athletic director, Kim Record, and she decided to roll the dice and keep him around. That was 5 years ago. Since then, he has paid that off and has become a powerhouse name in college basketball circles. So how long he stays at UNCG, what's next for him, those are questions, but he is a hot commodity, yes.
He didn't have a winning record in his first 5 years, Darren, to your point. And matter of fact, that fifth year, 15-19, although they were 10-8 in the SoCon, but 15-19 overall, they did actually go that fifth year to the CBI.
Right.
They did go to the CBI, but the 2016-2017 year, 25-10, that was their breakthrough.
Yep.
Where they tied for first in the SoCon and then went on to the NIT. And I asked that question because Frank Martin obviously is a guy right now considered. I mean, I know yesterday Seth Davis said that there's what were his comments? Widespread
belief that he wants out of Columbia, and he has done nothing to dispel that. Now today, he did do something to dispel that.
Yeah, he did a lot to dispel that today. Today were his most extensive comments. We're gonna circle back to this in a little bit as we do have Skylar coming up. But to read just a couple of quotes. If I'm wanted, this is what I want to call home. You don't live somewhere for 9 years and invest yourselves in the community the way my family has tried to do. Develop the friendships we have and then run away from that. If you know anything about me, I fixed this program and I know what's not working this year. But the program ain't broke. Whenever I can hit the reset button, we fixed it once in a bad situation and we'll fix it again. He also had said earlier in these comments today when asked about his future, he said, when I got here 9 years ago, you could have hired Coach K, Pat Riley, and Phil Jackson as the staff. If they cheated, they would have fixed the problem a lot quicker. But we didn't cheat. When you build things without cheating, it takes time. The first 3 years, we had no chance of being a postseason team. Maybe at the end of my third year, we could have been an NIT team, but we weren't an NCAA team. And there is much more from Frank Martin today that we're going to get to in just a little while. And I've got some thoughts and comments on that as well about his future in Columbia, South Carolina. Again, Gene Sapakoff will join us at 1:30 this afternoon. Grace Raynor, she joins us at 12:30 this afternoon. And we're going to go deep on Clemson spring practice. Couple of notes to pass along from there. Carolina baseball is in town tomorrow night to take on the Citadel Bulldogs. down at the Joe. I think they are almost all but sold out of tickets between these two teams. It's a nice little state rivalry, and Carolina's undefeated. They hope to be 11-0 when they leave the Low Country tomorrow evening. And joining us now on the phone lines, the pitching coach of that undefeated top 15 squad in college baseball is Skylar Meade. What's up, brother? You there, Skylar?
He should be there. Skylar, can you hear Jamie?
Yep.
Hey, Dan. What's up?
Hear you. I couldn't hear anyone else.
Oh, okay. So we've got a little bit of an issue here. All right, you know what? I'm going to call you back on a different line as we try and figure out our little setup here. I don't know why you can't hear Jamie, but that's annoying. But I'm going to get back to you here.
All right, we'll get Skylar right back into the mix here. South Carolina, of course, as I mentioned, is undefeated at 10-0 this weekend. 2 shutouts, only 1 run allowed by his pitching staff. That was on Friday, so none combined Saturday and Sunday. The Gamecocks are at the top of the pitching mountain right now. I was looking at the stats this morning, as a matter of fact, and they're right there with the likes of Vanderbilt and some of the other top pitching staffs across the country in college baseball with what they've done this year, their starters and their bullpen, and they're going to hope to continue that tomorrow night, and then certainly looking to try to continue that against the Texas Longhorns this weekend, Friday through Sunday in Austin, Texas. Skylar, can you hear us now?
I can.
All right, man. All right. Sorry about that. We were just kind of running over the numbers, brother. You got 4 games on the road this week at the Citadel. And, of course, the big one over there at Texas. They're all big to you as the pitching coach, certainly, though. But, man, you've got to feel great at this point in time. Your team has averaged about 9 runs a game, 9 or 10. And then this weekend they only put up 10 runs because Mercer threw it really well on the bump. But your guys were even better. They only gave up 1 in 27 innings pitched. I know that makes you feel good with the Citadel and the Longhorns coming up later on this week.
Absolutely. It was a really good weekend for our guys, and I thought, Far set the tone, obviously, on Friday by being really good. And, the bullpen guys, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but every guy came in and assaulted the strike zone. And it was certainly, we needed it on Sunday with the way the wind was kind of blowing in. And it was just one of those days. Kelly was kind of giving us fits, which we haven't had offensively at all. So it was much needed from our guys, but I'm proud of the way that they handled themselves for 27 innings.
Hey, where are your starters right now as far as the pitch count goes? What do you have them on their limits?
I mean, they could get up to 100 if they needed to, or if they're pitching in a manner that allows for them to get there. But I mean, we haven't had a guy go above 95 yet. Far got to 95 on Friday. I know a lot of programs might have a little higher numbers. Ours are for 2 reasons. Number one, we're not going to. I mean, you don't win a national championship in March. I mean, that's number one. We're not going to throw a guy 120 pitches. But number 2, we want to utilize our assets. We feel like we have a really good bullpen. So once a starter gets to a point where maybe he's not as crisp or doesn't have as much juice and stuff, we'll pass the baton on to whoever that next guy is. And we feel as if we got a lot of guys that can do it at a pretty high level.
Well, you do. There's no doubt about that. I asked the question because – I mean, you probably know where I'm going with this, but I think there were some eyebrows raised on Sunday when Bosnick came out of the game with a no-hitter. And I know that a no-hitter in college baseball isn't necessarily what it might be in the big leagues, but a no-hitter is still a no-hitter. And I think he was right around 89 or 90 pitches, and you went out there and got him somewhere in the 6th inning. And I was talking to somebody about that. We were just kind of chuckling because, like in the big leagues, if you've got a no-no going and you're already at 90 pitches, they don't really give a crap. You're just going to keep throwing because it's a no-no, but that's not the case at this level.
That's why they're called professionals. They get paid for that. These guys aren't. So I get that. And you know what? If you leave him in and he gave up a hit, I'm sure somebody would then say, well, why'd you leave him in? So we don't worry about that stuff. We're going to make the moves that we're convicted on and, put the guys in positions for success. Bosnick started to get a little bit, fatigued in that inning because you have to remember he missed a start because of the Clemson rainout. So we only utilized him in relief. So his numbers and his ability to go deeper in the game was a little different than the other 2 guys on the weekend with Thomas and Brandon. therefore, you could just kind of see it. Once it got to about pitch 75, it's a little less velocity, a little less command, and we're not going to let that happen, especially on a day when you needed to give up a 0. And so, we brought in Jack, and Jack stuffed the heck out of the strike zone and passed the ball off to Carey, and it worked as well as it could.
All right, but let's have fun with this. Let's say Bosnick had thrown 100 pitches through 8. Would he have gone back out in the 9th with a no-no?
100 pitches?
Yeah.
We probably would have. Maybe. I think that's a good question. If he was at 100 on the dot through 8 innings, I think we would have probably seen if he could go out there and get 3 pop-ups and 5 pitches and be at 105. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I'm answering that one honestly. I could give you a BS answer, but I won't do that to y'all.
No, I know you. Hey, I know some guys who put that uniform on. If they were at 100 pitches through 8, they had a no-no going. You would have to probably run a dumpster out there to remove them from the mound because they weren't going to get off of it. I promise.
Yeah, I don't want any of these big pitchers trying to whip me. So I think that would have been a good move had that happen and just say, "Hey, go ahead, brother."
But back to the point here though. So Jordan, Bosnick, Farr, all of them I think were 5 or 6 innings with their starts. Tremendous starts for all of them this weekend, and which means that you left half the game basically in the hands of your bullpen. And Skylar, you gave up one run all weekend. I just keep thinking of Harry Doyle in Major League, but he was talking about 1 hit. You gave up a few more than 1 hit, but not many. Just 1 run all weekend. So, you and I were texting this morning about these bullpen arms. This is the first time I can remember where everybody that you roll out there, and I don't mean just in your time at South Carolina, everybody that's rolled out there in a Carolina uniform, they have the ability. I know you're not encouraging everyone every pitch to just pump 97 in there, but they've got the ability. If they need to rear back and go get them, they can, and they've been pretty accurate throughout the year. I mean, and you've put guys in different positions, and they've seemed to work well. The Peters kid, wow, what a start for him. Mahoney, you mentioned. I mean, this bullpen, I don't know how you see it coming together, but it feels like guys are starting to find their roles and get comfortable with them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's never a totally finished product because there's going to be, a guy gets hot on the mound and he ends up maybe infiltrating a role that another guy potentially had. I don't know who those guys will be. I mean, the players will dictate that most certainly. But, one thing we do have, and I mean, we don't talk about it a ton, but I mean, I'll give you a little insight. I mean, we're just and this is real data. This isn't speculation. I mean, we have the ability to track all this, and we have the second hardest throwing pitching staff in the SEC. So, these guys need to come in there and do what they're good at, which is throw the ball with good conviction and, sometimes a little bit of elevation to, get guys under the ball. And, are we going to keep striking out 14 guys a game? And, I don't think that's feasible. I don't think that's possible, but with what we've needed for the first 10 games. And so it's nice that we have some guys that can do that and they can rear back and like you said, they can get it when they need to. And our message to them though is do that every pitch because you don't need to pace yourself. Get after it and get in there. And when your job's done, the next guy will do it just as well.
Opponents are hitting 168 against the Gamecocks pitching staff, of course, led by this man, Skylar Meade, the pitching coach for South Carolina. All right, so Seitler's going to start tomorrow night. I wasn't going to say that, but Mark has already announced it today in his press conference. So you got Josiah on the bump tomorrow. I'm sure you're going to get a bunch of guys in there. It's a midweek matchup, and then you got to go to Texas. But you're 10-0. You're 10-0. This week, 4 games on the road. What are you looking for out of your team? What are you looking to find in them, especially early in ball games, to determine their comfort level as they try to keep this streak alive?
Well, I think for a team as a whole, just from an offensive perspective, I mean, I thought Mercer did a good job on us. Now, that being said, we were so close to breaking the game open multiple times, and it just didn't happen for us. But I don't think we'll see the style of arms that they threw at us again the rest of the year. And I think it was just a little bit of probably a bad matchup in a sense. So hopefully our offense comes out and does what they're capable of and is after, gets after it. We need to play good, clean defense because you're going to need that the rest of the way. So I hope that Wednesday, you see good prep and guys making plays, making sharp throws through the first baseman's chest. And then, every pitcher that gets in there'll be some guys that didn't pitch this weekend. They need to keep showing us why they're going to be a piece of the puzzle as this thing moves forward. And so, I don't know who all is going to throw or when they're going to throw, but it should be a lot of guys, like you said. And I look for them to just come in and be aggressive and attack. And I think people sometimes go, a guy might give up a hit or two. I could care less about that. I just don't want to see a guy come in and be passive and nibble. They just need to come in there and get after it with whatever their stuff is.
The last couple or 2 or 3 of the last couple games you played against the Citadel, y'all have handled them well. But if I recall correctly, I know last year's season ended prematurely. If I recall correctly, the last time y'all were in Charleston, you had to hang on down here in 2019 in a tight one. I think it was 9-8 or 10-9, something like that. This is I know everybody, there's a lot of fans out there that see South Carolina and they see Texas. It's one of the 2 biggest series in the country this weekend. I think Arkansas's got to go to Oklahoma State, and that's one that folks have circled as well. But y'all don't, as a staff, and you try not to let your team overlook anybody. What have you learned about the Citadel? This proud baseball program, small school, obviously down here in Charleston, South Carolina, but and I know you've known about them for a long time. But what have you, since you've been coaching against them the last few years, what have you learned about that program and how they compete against your Gamecocks?
Well, first off, even their coaching staff, it's wild how everybody's connected. My when I played for Coach McDonald, him and Tony Skoll obviously go way back, and I've known Tony for a while. I knew who Blake Cooper was just as a person in college baseball from what he did as a Gamecock, and then Zach Luke. I was his first offer when he was at Butler High School in Louisville, Kentucky, and
wow,
Eastern Illinois was in there, and we're ready to snatch him out of Louisville. We think he can be a OVC Player of the Year guy, and then late Louisville swipes in and kept a hometown boy, and so. I know the coaching staff, their players, they've had a lot of the same players for a couple of years now. I feel like Jeff Brown's been, leading off for about 9 years.
Yep.
It's kind of like Furman had for a while. Furman had like the same team, what it felt like forever. I coached against them at Michigan State and then here. And I feel like Citadel is very similar in that regard. But, they're going to have a lot of left-handed hitters in that lineup. They got good team speed. I think they play with great energy. That's also part of the deal why you got to come out and be good early. If people remember the last game before COVID hit, we played them last year. I thought, the first inning, they jumped on us, got a couple hits on Coyne, but Coyne ended up striking out a couple hitters with the bases juiced and held it to 1 run. And then our bullpen went 8 innings of shutout ball. But that first inning, keeping it to 1 was huge. Cause they play with a lot of passion. And so you just don't want a team like that to start feeling really good about themselves, because that can snowball negatively for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I know that Tony and Mark, I've known Tony literally almost my whole life. And I know Tony and Mark were on the Team USA staff together. And, of course, Blake is Blake. He'll always be a hero at South Carolina. Has he ever asked you to go bass fishing with him before?
You'll have to ask Blake. We'll see if he likes me as much as he does. I know he's leg. I think Blake likes me close enough to ask him to go fishing, but I haven't gotten the invite yet. So maybe I'll have to bring that up to him tomorrow and we'll have to reassess our friendship.
Maybe if they beat you a couple times, you'll extend the offer in the off season.
Maybe I don't want that offer then.
Yeah, that's right. No, yeah, don't fall in that trap either, because he might be the best bass fisherman that I think I know. I mean, he's one of those type guys that can put their pinky in the water with like a hot dog on the end of it, and they'll reel in the 10-pounder that nobody knew existed. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. What was the guy when it would have been when I was a kid? Was it Tommy Houston had the Saturday morning stuff on ESPN?
Jimmy Houston.
Okay.
Jimmy Houston. Okay, it was. I knew it ended in a Y. There you go. I was close. Be one of those guys.
All right. Before we let you run, let me ask you about Texas. The Longhorns have won 7 of 9. They got off to a slow start, but I mean, rightfully so. It was Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Ole Miss, their first 3 in the State Farm College Baseball Showdown over in Arlington I think it was at the Rangers ballpark, as a matter of fact. So they're 0-3 against the SEC. But that doesn't That is exactly what it sounds. Those three teams are in the top 5 in the country right now. It's a place that you're trying to get to, and I know that you'd like to make them 0-6 versus the SEC. But I don't know how much you've actually gotten into Texas just yet because the Citadel is tomorrow, Skylar. But if you've at least peeked at them, do you have a little bit of a scouting report as you continue to try to prepare for this trip to Austin?
Yeah, I haven't delved into them very much, but what I can tell you just from, we watch a lot of college baseball when we're not playing, obviously, and so I saw some games of theirs down there. They're a very athletic team. They got some skills with the bunt. They're Friday guys, they got a lot of good arms. They got velocity like we do. So, it'll be something that our hitters will have to revert back to, the scrimmages or when they played Clemson and stuff like that to see some velocity. But they're going to be a good team. I mean, look, it's Texas. But, hopefully our guys, they don't divert their focus Wednesday because Citadel will whip you if you don't show up and be ready to play. But, yeah, we're just excited. I mean, we're just excited to get on the road and hopefully handle Charleston on, going down there to Charleston tomorrow night and then hopping on a plane for the first time, which will be a little weird. I haven't been on a plane in a long time since COVID hit.
Have you ever been to Austin, Texas before?
I have not.
Yeah.
I have never been.
Well, no, I haven't either. It's the first time that the Gamecocks and the Longhorns have played since the championship of the 2002 College World Series. And the Longhorns at Houston Street won that one against Drew Meyer and Jerome Peters and the Gamecocks. But maybe Skylar Meade and Mark Kingston's Gamecocks can get a little revenge coming up this weekend over in the Lone Star State. On that note, we'll let you run, my friend. I know you got things to get to, but it's a big week for you. So go out there. Hopefully next time we talk to you, that record will be 14-0 instead of 10-0. And then, you can take Blake Cooper fishing or whatever you want to do with him.
I know. He called me one time this summer. He was on the lake kind of close to my house. And so I was like, he can even give me a little heads up. I mean, come on.
That's right. Did you understand what he was saying on the phone? Or was it an every other word thing?
I brought Coach Lake in to translate for me. We got it done.
That's right.
I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, so I'm probably considered very much a northerner, but that's why you got to have Coach Lake in there to translate for you sometimes. That's
right. Yeah, old Blake. He's got the pride of Nice's, South Carolina. Nice's has their own little language over there, and he's one of them. But hey, man, go get him. Go get him. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow in town, and good luck in Austin, Texas.
Hey, I appreciate you guys, and we'll look forward to talking to y'all soon.
We always look forward to speaking with you. Thanks, Skylar. Skylar Meade, the pitching coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks, 10-0 tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. First pitch down at the Joe against Tony Skoll and the Citadel Bulldogs. Tickets are, I think there's a couple left.
As of yesterday. I haven't seen an update today. As of yesterday, there were 222, like 24 hours ago yesterday. There can't be many left. So if you want them, try and get them immediately.
Yeah, you're going to have to head to citadelsports.com for more information on that. All right, we do need to hit a timeout. When we return, we're going to check in with Grace Raynor. It's been a while. Grace, of course, with The Athletic, covering Clemson football. There are some things to discuss as it pertains to spring practice for the Tigers, DJ Uiagalelei, and much, much more. So hang tight. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. We'll be right back.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Up.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. Whatever you got planned this week, cancel it. 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours at whatever price it takes. I repeat, 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours. To the first 72 car buyers interested in saving up to $6,000 on a new Volkswagen for 3 days only. Every new Volkswagen and pre-owned vehicle at our bottom line price. Direct to the public, regardless of profit. Qualified purchases with interest-free financing for 60 months, and all trade-ins will be accepted. Interested parties should arrive early for best selection. You will not find a lower price anywhere in the country. 72-hour Volkswagen clearance, savings up to $6,000, 3 days only at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Up.
$16.66 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax tag includes $4.99.50 administration fee subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at Mcfadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about Mcfadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
Guys, spring is finally in the air. You know what that means? Basketball in its home stretch. March Madness promotion at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clemens Ferry Road. From now until the end of the tournament, $5 Sweetwater pints. That's right. Every Sweetwater, just $5 at Dog and Duck, Park West, Bell Hall, and their Clemens Ferry location. Plus, baseball spring training, college baseball, spring football. It's all available at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and online.
All right, 12:31. Welcome back to Tuesday afternoon on the JB and Goldwater Show, protected by Mcfadden Pest Control, or friends and yours, Stokes Volkswagen, StokesVW.com. We're on the JB and Goldwater app. Download that into your phone. It is free. You can also, and should have by now, like a long time ago, downloaded the Athletic app because it is maybe the best sports app in America. And if you do that, this fine young lady will keep you entertained for hours because her writing is second to none. It is Grace Raynor covering the Clemson Tigers, and it's been way too long. Grace, how are you?
I'm doing well. Y'all are the best hype men ever. Thank you.
That's why people come on the show, Grace, because Jamie just tells everyone how great they are, and people just want to come back.
Yeah, man. What a time. I love it.
Well, you know, in defense of my comments, we do have people worthy of those comments on our show. So we just say what's true. If I'll say this, if someone's not very good, which is rare, I don't know that we've ever actually had somebody we just flat out didn't like. We just don't say much. We just say, okay, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're not coming back.
So, yeah, we don't do that to you. We know how talented you are. But how are you? First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It seems like, we're right in the thick of spring, and it seems like we're hopefully about to return to a little bit of normalcy in terms of the country and the pandemic and everything. So I'm doing well. How are y'all doing?
Yeah, well, we're doing fine. I mean, it's an amazing time in sports, right? With March Madness set to go, baseball, you got spring practice in football, you got the FCS playing football, golf, the NBA. I mean, it's all crazy right now, which there was a time in our lives last year where we wondered if we would see this again, and here we are. And that's why you're on for spring practice. I know that that they're well underway up there. We've been keeping up with things, and there are some interesting storylines, Grace, to Clemson spring practice this year. You've got C.J. Spiller, which we're going to get to in a minute. We're going to get to Tony Elliott here in a moment, and a couple of other things. But I want to ask you about Dabo's comments yesterday. He was on the air up there in the Upstate describing DJ Uiagalelei, and he said it was like somebody went to a lab and created him out of Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. And if that's not scary for the college football world, I don't know what is. What is your take on those comments?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that from the very second that DJ got on campus, this was kind of the natural comparison. If people wanted to know, where was he in terms of where Trevor arrived as a freshman, and what about Deshaun? And so we've heard Dabo Sweeney really compare him to the two of them. But the thing that he has always said is that he's always been right where they were mentally, but he's just also 6'5" and 250 pounds. So he's always been a little bit more physically developed. And then you hear Tony Elliott talk about DJ as a runner, and he's comparing him to Taj Boyd. So I think if you're a Clemson fan and you're listening to your quarterback of the future being described as bits and pieces of your three most recent, if you want to call them generational or elite quarterbacks, whatever adjective you want to use, you have to be really excited. And I think that with DJ, he seems to process things really well. He certainly looks the part. I've seen him in spring practice twice now. He had a deep ball to EJ Williams yesterday that looked, mid-season form. So whatever Clemson is doing on the recruiting trail quarterback wise, they certainly have this nice little streak going, and I don't expect there to be really any drop off now that this team does belong to DJ.
What's going on behind him? I know that Tyson has been out. Any update on him?
Yeah, so Dabo has said that Tyson's been in protocol, and he hasn't really expanded beyond that, but it has been a little bit of a weird sight in practice because you don't see Tyson, and then all of a sudden Hunter Helms, the fourth string walk-on from last year, is getting second team reps in practice, and then Will Spires, the punter, is getting third team reps as Clemson's emergency guy. So it has been a little weird in that regard. But I know Clemson will be really excited to get Tyson back into the fold, and he's got, in my opinion, Tyson pretty much has a lock on that backup job.
What's so great for DJ Uyunglele's situation, all the quarterback situation, really, is that there isn't, or to this point there hasn't been turnover on the offensive staff, at least for the most part. Obviously, CJ Spiller is stepping onto the field as a coach. We all know that, but the plays are still being called by Tony Elliott, and we'll get more into him in just a minute. But as you've kind of watched these guys progress in their careers, does it seem like, I mean, generally young guys, even as talented as they can be, there will be some buffer time and learning a new offense and understanding what happens out there. But that just never hasn't seemed to at least be the case at Clemson. Why is that?
You mean in terms of like young players?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think early enrollment is a huge part of it.
Okay.
We're at the point now where Clemson has a dozen plus kids enrolling early as true freshmen every year. And so they get a whole spring and they get to go through that system. I think staff continuity is a big part of it. Like you said, Tony Elliott's going to be calling the plays again. He's been the primary play caller since 2015. So just the familiarity of a system is there. And then I think Clemson is just recruiting at a level where they're getting guys who are really developed. They're coming in as these polished prospects. They're playing at big time high school football. I mean, DJ was playing at one of the best high schools in America. Bo Collins, the freshman wide receiver, was DJ's teammate at St. John Bosco. And so I think it's a combination of all of them. But yeah, spring is just so important in getting these guys developed and getting them into the system, refreshing the older guys. And I think as we move more and more towards this trend of early enrollment, we're going to see these guys come fall be pretty much ready-made to go out there and be ready to run this offense with some confidence.
What areas have they been most concerned with early in spring practice, Grace? Offensively, defensively, what position groups or what areas of the team have they expressed a little bit more interest in trying to develop a little bit more? We all know that it's not, no offense to any of these teams, it's not Furman or SC State or something like that game one. It's Georgia this year. They have to be sharp early. So what have they been focused on improving the most?
Yeah, I think you look offensively, and there's been a lot of talk about the offensive line. Dabo Sweeney was very frank about the fact that they did not have the depth that they needed in 2020. He didn't feel like he could sub very often because that second team just wasn't quite ready. And so offensive line was a big talk in 2020. It's going to be a big talk again in 2021. We talked to left guard Matt Bockhorst last night, who was very upfront about, hey, the run blocking just wasn't where it needed to be. It wasn't consistent enough. The pass blocking was okay, but in the run game, like, we have to be better. And so I think that you'll see an offensive line that is going to enter 2021 with a chip on its shoulder, but also with a sense of urgency in terms of, hey, we know this is where we got to improve some things and we have to develop some depth. So I think that that's the big thing on the offensive line, especially when you have a new quarterback and especially when you have a new starting running back. Defensively, I think that there is some good depth in the cornerback room, but Clemson lost Darian Kendrick. He's no longer with the program. And so I think that that's kind of who's going to step up in that regard. I think Dabo said Andrew Booth Jr. is having the best spring of his career. Mario Goodrich has kind of been snake bit by some injuries in the past. And so I don't know that we've fully seen what he looks like and what his full potential is. And then I think it's who's just going to step up and establish. You've got Sheridan Jones in that room. You have Malcolm Green in that room, Fred Davis II. You have options. But DK was the most talented corner in that room. I think we all know that. And so who's gonna slide on over and be ready to help the Clemson secondary that really had some problems down the stretch, especially against Ohio State.
Have you heard anything about DK and what his next steps will be?
No, he is officially in the transfer portal. I do know that. So I think we'll just kind of wait and see where he ends up. But I think it was at the beginning of spring practice, I believe, when Dabo told us that he was no longer with the team, and just he didn't really go into a lot of detail and just kind of said, hey, sometimes change is the best thing. So certainly he wishes DK well, and but I'm fascinated to see where he ends up. I think certainly he commands Power 5 interest.
Grace, I want to go back to the chip on the shoulder, because Clemson has been one of the top 2-3 programs over the last 5, 6, maybe even 7 years. To fall back and say, all right, we got our tails whipped and now we need to play with a bit of a chip on our shoulder. To me, the first time I heard that and then kind of cycled through as more guys said it, it almost feels like the cliche thing to say, the easy thing to say to rally a group together. I mean, why do you need a chip here? You've got some of the most elite athletes in the country. You're regularly competing for championships. Why do you need a chip?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting question. And this is kind of something that Matt Bockhorst touched on last night, was that, when Ohio State came into this game, he said they were just hungrier. They were more mad. They remembered what had happened the last time that these two teams met. And he was very upfront about, hey, you can tell when one team has a little bit more of an edge than another. And that's what happened. Ohio State didn't just beat Clemson. They absolutely blew them out. And Bockhorst was kind of saying, look, they dominated us on both sides of the ball. Their mindset was better. Their hunger was more evident. And then he kind of said same thing with Alabama in the 2017 Sugar Bowl. You'll remember, obviously, Clemson beat Alabama in the 2016 National Championship, and then Alabama comes into the 2017 Sugar Bowl and just blows Clemson out again. And so I think that they're just mad. That's kind of the sense that I've gotten. And I don't get the sense that it's something that they're going to, be defined by or just completely linger over. But even Trenton Simpson was saying last night, hey, Skalski has not let the defense forget what happened. Bockhorst has clearly not forgotten what happened in the Sugar Bowl. And so I think that it's just a mindset that they're entering spring into, just being cognizant of, hey, we got blown out and we have all the pieces to be back in the playoffs. But as Bockhorst said, there's a difference between being in the playoffs and winning the whole thing. And that's the line that Clemson's trying to get over again in 2021.
On Twitter at GM Raynor, Grace Raynor, of course, with The Athletic, covering Clemson. What I find interesting about those comments is you're referencing players holding players accountable. You're not referencing coaches holding players accountable. We all know that Dabo is asked about everything and he gives answers to the best of his ability, but these answers are coming from the players. And so it seems to me like Coach Sweeney and that staff feel very comfortable with the leadership on that football team, even as it stands here in March.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you look at Clemson's defense and they return everyone except for Darian Kendrick now at this point. And so you've got some really established leaders on that team and in that locker room. I mean, Skalski is back for year number 6. Nolan Turner is back for year number 6. Bockhorst has really come into his own on the offensive line. Even DJ, Dabo was saying, look, he's a sophomore and he's not a super loud guy, but he'll get on his teammates when he needs to. And DJ was very upfront about saying, you have to do that as a quarterback. And so I think that's part of Clemson's culture. And I think that it's part of the reason why they have been so successful is because they do have so much leadership, so much player-led initiative, so much player-led leadership. And I think that that's something that Dabo really fosters and instills. But yeah, I mean, this is a team that has a lot of pieces, has a lot of experience. And obviously the offensive side of the ball looks a lot different than it did last year. But there's no shortage of guys to step up and say, hey, let's keep each other in check and remember what happened to us the last time we were out on the field.
The off-field leader of the offense is Tony Elliott. And when he was asked, Grace, just a couple of weeks ago about his interest in the Tennessee position, he didn't give the standard run-of-the-mill type coach speak answer with anything. He was, I thought, very open and candid about his situation at Clemson, about his future in college football and what he wants that to look like, what he's learned under Coach Sweeney. And he kind of lumped all of that into one big conversation that basically said, I'm here until the right opportunity comes along. Were you surprised with how candid and how open he was in his comments about his coaching future? Because I think we all took from that he's going to be at Clemson until the perfect opportunity comes along. He's not going to be at Clemson forever.
For sure. Yeah. That's my favorite part about covering Tony. I think he is so honest and so transparent and just very refreshing. I love the way his mind works. But I think the biggest difference that I have observed just in the 4 years that I've covered Clemson is a couple of years ago, you talked to Tony Elliott about head coaching jobs, and it was something that he knew he wanted to do and something that he wanted to work towards, but maybe didn't feel like he was quite ready, or was, just kind of feeling out, okay, what does this process look like? You talk to Tony Elliott now, and this is no longer an if situation. This is a win. Like, Tony Elliott will be a head coach, and he knows exactly what he's looking for now. And so I thought that it was really important to kind of hear him out, like, okay, what are you looking for? Because you have had some opportunities, and clearly he has turned them down. And I thought he was very candid in saying, okay, look, I'm going to stick to my guns. I want alignment. I want, the AD and the president and the head coach to all be on the same page. I want to be able to win. I want to be in a place where I can recruit. I want to be in a place where we can live in a community. He's got 2 young boys that he doesn't want to move around a lot. And then I thought that the most interesting thing that Tony Elliott said was, I want to be in a situation where I don't have to move. And so I think that when you look at it through that lens, it makes sense why he's been so picky, because I get the sense that when Tony Elliott leaves Clemson and takes a head coaching job, I get the sense that in his perfect world, like, that's it, kind of a situation just like Dabo Sweeney, where Clemson has become Dabo's, let's see, this is year 15 he's been at Clemson, and he's been the head coach since 2009. And so I think Tony is just very intentional. He knows what he's looking for, and certainly he is now in a position where he can be picky. He's going to continue being on the top of these lists on these coaching searches, and he can say, okay, this is the right place and this is the right time.
How much actual influence do you think that Coach Sweeney has in some of these decisions? I know that he's not stepping in and making any decision for Tony. I understand that, but how much do you think Tony leans on Coach Sweeney, kind of bends his ear on some of these opportunities when they come up?
I think a lot. I think that, both Tony and Dabo have said that their relationship is a little bit like a father-son relationship, even though Dabo is 51, Tony is in his early 40s. So the age gap doesn't really make a ton of sense for father-son, but that's kind of how they have viewed their relationship. And Tony has been very open about the fact that Dabo's been a mentor to him for years. And so these were conversations that they had this summer. Absolutely. I think Dabo has a really good understanding of, hey, of course I want to keep Tony Elliott around as long as possible. He's one of the best play callers in the country, but also Dabo wants to see his assistants move on and get what they want and achieve what they want to achieve in coaching. And so I think that they were very open about these conversations. I think Tony leans on Dabo a lot. And I think that he sees Dabo's situation, and that's what he's looking for in terms of, planning routes, being in a community, having your family in this place, being in a place where you can win and being in a place where you can recruit. And so I think that a lot of what Tony wants to model his future program after is what he sees firsthand at Clemson every single day with Dabo Sweeney.
Grace Raynor with The Athletic, 1249. Just a couple quick ones left here, Grace, and we'll let you run to lunch or whatever you have to do today. I know we always have our guests on during lunchtime. I'm sure they're hungry when we extend them out for 20 and 30 minutes.
Send them a DB's cheesesteak.
Yeah, we'll send you a DB's cheesesteak. Or next time you're in Charleston, we'll treat you to one. How about that?
Perfect.
When Shane Beamer got hired at South Carolina, he was public and then was public again maybe a month ago about his relationship with Coach Sweeney. He said that Dabo had reached out to him when he got hired, or I think it was when he got hired, or maybe it was right before he got hired, and was really encouraging him, giving him some advice, some encouragement, some support. And then just a few weeks ago, Coach Beamer again said, he's pretty good friends with Dabo Sweeney and his wife and Dabo's wife. They know each other, and he considers him a friend, calls him a friend. They talk often. Does Coach Sweeney ever speak about his relationship with Shane Beamer that you know of, or has anybody asked him what he thinks about Shane Beamer being head coach at South Carolina?
Yeah, that was something that he got asked about when Shane Beamer got hired, and he echoed that same sentiment. It's not really something that comes up often, and I don't think we've talked about it really since he got asked about it. But yeah, he echoed that same sentiment. He knows him, respects him. They have a relationship. Obviously, Shane's dad being in the ACC for as long as he was, you can tell that there is a deep respect there and a friendship there. And I think that is what's cool. I think that's what makes the Clemson South Carolina rivalry at its best, is when you've got two coaches that are going at it on the field, but have a deep respect and friendship in some cases off of the field. So yeah, I think it's a mutual appreciation, and certainly I think if you're just a resident of South Carolina, you're excited to see what Shane Beamer can do, to see if you can get this rivalry competitive again, see if you can get it a little more equal, whereas Clemson is just, completely dominating it right now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, I mean, I know that Coach Spurrier and Coach Sweeney had some off the field spats. We all knew that Steve loved to jab Dabo, especially when they were winning all those games, those 5 straight games. But since then, this rivalry, outside of a close one because of a late score in 2015, Carolina wasn't any good that year. This rivalry has not been close, and I'm not saying that Clemson wants South Carolina to be good so they can get beat by them every single year again. I know that's what Gamecock fans want. Clemson fans want to beat South Carolina every year, but I do think that from a competitive standpoint, what Dabo is saying is I think he's being truthful. I think he looks at this and says, look, we are very comfortable in our own skin at Clemson. We're comfortable playing anybody, anytime, anywhere, and we think we can beat everybody that we play. And because of that, we don't want to have a rivalry game every year that doesn't mean anything. We want to have something we want to have Alabama and Clemson in the national championship game. We want to have that at the end of the regular season against our cross-state rival. I think he's truthful when he says that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you look at Dabo, and this is a kid who grew up in Alabama, obviously, and so every year when Clemson, South Carolina rolls around, he tells really funny stories about, wearing his Alabama gear as a 5th grader to school, and it's a lot like it is in Alabama. He always jokes, when you're born in Alabama, they stamp you at the hospital. You're either a Bama fan or an Auburn fan.
That's
and he
right.
always jokes it's the same here in this state. He says he'll go into a high school and the logo on his shirt is very indicative of how he's received and how he's perceived. And so certainly, I think that, like you said, Clemson is dominating so much on the national stage right now. And Dabo has really gotten his team to buy into not thinking about the opponent and thinking about themselves every single week. That I think it's a formula that's clearly working for them. But if you're a football fan, sure. Yeah, I think we all want to see South Carolina and Clemson get a little more competitive.
Yeah, it needs to be. It needs to be. All right.
Spoken from a South Carolina fan, it certainly needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. These late November matchups, Grace, are killing me. But that doesn't mean we don't love you around here. You know that. All right. Let me ask you about CJ Spiller. What's his presence been like on the field? How has the response been from that running back room, the rest of the staff, the rest of the team? Obviously, he's coaching the running backs, but this guy, a superstar at Clemson, a Hall of Famer at the school, in the ACC, a college football Hall of Famer, an NFL veteran. He adds so much more than just coaching running backs. How early, or what type of impact, I should say, has he had on this program early on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in my 4 years of covering Clemson, I think this is the smartest staffing decision that Dabo has made that I've seen. I mean, CJ Spiller, as Dabo himself said, there is no greater ambassador for Clemson than CJ Spiller. I mean, you just look at everything that he did in his career. You look at the fact that he came to Clemson in the first place as a 5-star recruit who everyone thought would stay in Florida. He stayed in touch with Dabo. He built his off-season home in the area. I think that CJ is just such a natural, and we've only seen him in practice twice, but you can just tell that he just has eased into this role so seamlessly and so well. And I think that, what CJ will do best off the field is recruiting. I mean, I think he's going to very quickly become one of the best recruiters that Clemson has, because he lived this life. He was a 5-star. He chose Clemson. He can tell you what it's like to play for Dabo Sweeney. He can tell you what it's like to live in Clemson. He can tell you what it's like to then go be a first-round pick. He's accomplished everything that any one of these kids in this recruiting process would want to accomplish. And now he's coming back full circle and starting his professional career where it all started. So I think just you look at everything he brings. He was on the IPK board. He clearly loves Clemson. I think he'll help Clemson in special teams for sure. We're out there watching him, coach these guys up in punt return. Obviously, we all know what CJ did as a kick returner. I just think that one of the things that struck me that Tommy Bowden said when we were talking about CJ was that there is no downside. Like he just couldn't see a single negative to this hire, and that's how I feel as well. I think it was one of the best decisions Dabo made this offseason.
Clemson's Pro Day coming up this week, Thursday, March the 11th. They'll actually be airing that live on the ACC network beginning at 10 a.m. I think it'll last till about 12:30. And Grace, we feel quite comfortable in saying that you'll be covering that as well. So we certainly look forward to everything you've got to say about it in The Athletic. What else will we be looking forward to that you'll be covering in The Athletic over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so obviously, as you said, Pro Day's coming up. I believe Clemson scrimmages for the first time tomorrow. Assuming today's Tuesday, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, their first scrimmage is tomorrow. So I think that'll give us just a larger window into kind of what Dabo Sweeney thinks of this team, what they look like when they're obviously the quarterbacks won't be live. But the rest of these guys getting some live action. I think that we're all curious to see how Justin Ross continues to progress this spring and what his diagnosis looks like. He is obviously a non-contact participant, but I think that's something that we'll be checking in on. And then Clemson goes on spring break and they come back March 22nd and their spring game is April 3rd. So really, as usual, Clemson is one of the first teams out there again after the season's over. They're always one of the first teams back on the field. And so their spring is going to be ending right as a lot of guys are getting going across the country. But, I think you look at this spring just like you've looked at Clemson's spring in every season for the last 4 or 5 years. The pieces are there. The leadership is there. The path is there. I think that this is the beginning of college football playoff run number 7.
I'm hard to dispute it.
Grace, you must have a lot of frequent flyer miles. I know that.
I know. I need to cash in on some Marriott points at some point.
That's right.
I've lost this whole pandemic thing. I've lost all my frequent flyer miles. That might be, slightly joking. That might be the worst part of this whole thing.
Oh man, that's a bummer. You lost them all. That's a bummer.
Yep.
Well, Grace, we love having you on. We thank you so much for wonderful insight, as always, into Clemson's football program. You do a marvelous job for The Athletic. This is not coach speak or host speak. We're speaking the truth here, and we really, really appreciate it. We look forward to speaking with you again very soon.
Yeah, well, thank y'all so much, as always, for having me, and look forward to talking some ball in the future.
You got it. Yes, ma'am. Grace Raynor with The Athletic on Twitter at GM Raynor, on Twitter at GM Raynor. A couple of the notable participants, by the way, in Clemson's Pro Day. Again, 10 a.m. to 12:30 on Thursday, live on the ACC network. Amari Rogers, Cornell Powell, DeAndre Overton, the wideouts, tight end J.C. Chalk, Adam Choice, he'll be in there. And so will Travis Etienne, some of the notable names to keep an eye on when Pro Day hits in just a couple of days in the upstate. All right, it's time for a timeout. We need to hit a break. How about that? When we return, we'll get into Les Miles. We'll talk about Kirby and Saban. Frank Martin with some major comments on his future this morning. We're going to discuss those. We did not miss the Dak Prescott contract. We'll mention that when we get back as well. What does that mean for Deshaun Watson, by the way? It could mean something very good, I would like to think. And then Gene Sapakoff's ahead at 1:30, and we got a bunch to get to with him today. So jam-packed final hour. We hope you'll hang with us right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at Mcfadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about Mcfadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risk their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston. Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Low Country. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen and protected by our friends at Mcfadden Pest Control. McFaddenPestControl.com. Now is the time to protect your home. The rain, all the heavy rain is out of here. It's starting to get a little bit warmer. The critters start moving. Just like we told you when it was really cold, they wanted to come. These weather changes, they start moving them around. Mcfadden Pest Control, that's where you want to go. They are locally owned and operated in the Low Country of South Carolina over 40 years. That's over 4 decades worth of keeping the Low Country safe from letting the outside in. McFaddenPestControl.com. And make sure that you get them to spray the yard for mosquitoes and also protect your home from termites as well. We use them here with all 3 services. You should as well. McFaddenPestControl.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app, also at jbandgoldwatershow.com, and make sure you follow us on social media. If you haven't already done so, do it right now. Individually at Sports Media JB, at Darren Goldwater, and collectively at JB and Goldwater. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. That is also our text line, and you can utilize that, pop up some comments, and we'll try to plug them into the show here as we move along. Gene Sapakoff, speaking of moving along, he'll join us at about 1:30 this afternoon on our program. Darren, let me get a couple of quick things in here. Yesterday, Brian Fisher with Athlon Sports did break the news that the NCAA is planning to move forward with a limited one-time transfer rule. They expect this to be approved at the D1 Council meeting in April, which is right after the Final Four. This does not mean this will be a permanent rule in college athletics. This just means that the one-time transfer rule across all sports would be available for the 2021-2022 calendar year only. So we'll have to keep our eyes on. I don't know if this is going to be like a trial run for them to see how it goes. I think there's some coaches out there that would like to see this more permanent, allowing not just transfer as you please, but allowing athletes a one-time transfer without having to sit out. So we'll have to see what comes of that. What do you think about that?
Well, you've already had a bunch of athletes utilize this, assuming that this rule is going to come through. So they're almost backed into a corner having to do this. So is it going to be a year-round rule, a full-time thing with the NCAA? It's probably a trial run this upcoming year. I don't think this is something the NCAA is going to want to just allow freedom of transfers, again, only one time, across all sports forever. I think that could create more chaos, but I think at least for this one season, with all of the uncertainty we've had from COVID, and we'll have a little bit more next year, even though there'll be more normalcy. Let's see how it works next year and then move forward. I don't think it's going to be a regular thing, though.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't either. I don't think it will be. I'll be anxious to see how name, image, and likeness could affect this, because we got to remember, man, when NIL sets in and these kids are getting endorsements from, community businesses, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they're going to pop up and leave, that could cause some problems somewhere. Right. So we'll see how that kind of works out. All right, today on the docket, as far as college basketball is concerned, Byu and Gonzaga and the WCC final tonight, the West Coast Conference final tonight at 9 on ESPN from Vegas. Doesn't matter what happens in this game with Gonzaga. They're still probably going to be the top overall seed in the tournament anyways, but we'll see if they can win that tournament championship. How about Oral Roberts and North Dakota State, 9 o'clock tonight on ESPN2. That is the Summit League Championship from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Elon and Drexel will play for the CAA Championship tonight. Unfortunately, the College of Charleston is not in there, but you can check this one out at 7 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network. Mount St. Mary's and Bryant will play in the Northeast Conference Final tonight at 7 on ESPN2. And also at 7 o'clock on ESPN from Indianapolis is the Horizon League Final. That is Cleveland State and Oakland. Oakland is 12-17 overall, but they could win tonight. And if they do, they are dancing. They won't be the first team in history with a losing record in March Madness, but they could be another one.
Well, I mean, you talk about that record. Elon is the hottest team right now in the Colonial, and they weren't at the beginning of the year. They couldn't buy a win at the beginning of the year. They were one of the worst teams in Division I basketball. Now they're the hottest team in the league. They got some help from the officials to beat James Madison, and former College of Charleston assistant Mark Byington, who's over there, did a great job with James Madison. Got a little bit of help there at the end, and then just pounded their way through yesterday. And now they're taking on Drexel to see if Elon can go dancing. I don't believe they've gone as a D1 team. So it's a big game here for Elon tonight.
The Phoenix.
That's right.
Other teams starting conference tournaments today: the Southland, the Big West, Conference USA, the MAC, MAAC, Mid-Atlantic Athletic Conference, and, of course, the ACC. 3 games today. First one will tip off at 2 p.m. on the ACC network. That is 12th-seeded Pittsburgh and 13th-seeded Miami. Duke and Boston College will follow. Like I said yesterday, it's rare, very rare, actually never, that you see Duke on the first day of the ACC tournament. They're the 10th overall seed. Boston College is the 15th. And then tonight at 7 on the ACC network, Notre Dame and Wake Forest in that 11-14 matchup. I'll tell you what, it'll be interesting to see what happens after this Miami-Pittsburgh game. If Miami loses, what's the future of Jim Larrañaga?
It's a good question. I was watching one of their most recent games. It may have been the Clemson game. And the discussion amongst the announcers was, look, he's probably a Hall of Famer based on what he did at George Mason, taking him to the Final Four, another Sweet 16, had more success at Miami. Do you run him out after a bad year? or do you give him a little bit more time? I would imagine the sentiment around Miami and that basketball program is somewhat similar to what's going on around South Carolina right now. That's, Larinaga has more clout. He certainly, no one's putting Frank Martin in the Hall of Fame right now or even discussing it, but I would imagine the conversations are at least in line, parallel in some ways.
We'll come back to Frank here in just a few moments. Do want to touch on what happened with Les Miles last night. Let go at Kansas. It was apparently a mutual decision between athletics director Jeff Long and Les Miles. Jeff Long and Les Miles go way back to their Michigan days, and Jeff Long hired Les Miles at Kansas. His record has been quite poor. Based on his comments yesterday, he felt comfortable about the future of Kansas football. I think he feels like they've recruited some pretty good players, and at least, maybe they won't be the doormat of the Big 12 or college football for that matter anymore. They've been brutal over the last couple of years. One of the things that we'll get to the LSU side of this in a second. One of the things that stuck out to me is that this all happened, Darren, unless I've totally missed something.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that happened with Les Miles was in 2013. Nothing after that, right?
That's as far as we know.
Okay. As far as we know, that's what I'm saying. I haven't missed anything else. All right. So we're 8 years removed. So the first thing that stuck with me is these in today's day and age of sports, if you're a coach or an athlete or an athlete, whoever, these type of allegations are following you around. And it doesn't mean that just because you've moved on from that school, wherever it happened, it doesn't mean that you're going to be safe somewhere else. I don't know that you could always say that, but you certainly can now. These some are allegations. I think some have been proven. I think he's actually admitted as much as some of the involvement that he had with some of these folks down at LSU, some of these females and the things that happened. Although his version was a little bit different, he did not deny spending time with them and sending them messages and things of that nature. But that was the first thing that struck me is we're 8 years removed from this. He has long been gone at LSU. He's at Kansas, and he's not at Kansas anymore because of what happened 8 years ago at his former school.
Nor should he be, and nor should he coach again, nor should he be in any position of power again. LSU, it was recommended that the athletic director recommended he get fired.
Yeah, Joe Oliva.
And LSU decided, well, no, we're not going to fire him. So right off the bat, we know how bad it was, but LSU was winning. It wasn't until they started losing that Les Miles was shown the door. So this was kept under seal, basically. And then Jeff Long in Kansas claims, whether this is true or not, claims he had none of that information when they hired Les Miles. But the facts remain. The allegations, a lot of them which have been proven true already, are inexcusable. They're disgusting. It's a pattern of using your power in order to manipulate women. And that's not something that he should have gotten away with in the past. So he should have been out at LSU at the time. It shouldn't have led to a Kansas job. And now he should be gone for good. I don't think we see Les Miles again. And I think it's the right move. To be honest, it only took 2 or 3 days for Kansas to make the move. I thought it took too long.
Yeah, it didn't take them long. And again, I think so I want to get your thoughts on this, because when it was a mutual decision, I actually do believe it was a mutual decision. I think that Les Miles looked at this and said, I'm not going to be able to run from it any longer. There's no point in keeping my neck in public with all of this going on. I think there's one side of that. I think the other side is Kansas is like, look, we have to do this. So we either word this is a mutual decision, or we're just going to fire you one way or another here. But to make it look a little bit better, we all know how everybody likes to try to clean things up as much as they can, Darren, when there's a separation. If there's a mutual respect like there is between Jeff Long and Les Miles. And so I think that Les Miles looked at it and said, yeah, there's no way out of this. I'm not going to fight this. If you are going to part ways with me, I'm going to agree to do that. I don't know what additional details are coming. I don't know if there's contract details or money settlements or whatever, financial settlements or whatever. But when I saw that it was mutual, I kind of felt like, at least I kind of felt like Les Miles said, it's over. I know it's over. I'm not going to fight that it's over. I'm just going to acknowledge it and I'll move on.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the contractual language in there. By saying mutual, it probably absolves Kansas of having to go through the legal process of, I mean, obviously they could have fired him without paying him. I mean, that's obvious. They could fire him with cause right now and not pay him, but they probably just wanted to save some face. And personally, I think they should have used the word fired. Why give Les Miles here the opportunity to walk out with his head held high and say, we mutually parted ways? It's almost like Jeff Long, like you said, they go way back.
Yeah.
It's almost like he gave him a platform to say, all right, I'm not going to hammer you as much as I can, maybe as much as I should. So we'll allow you to say we're mutually parting ways. But in reality, if Kansas really wanted to make the right stance, they should have just fired him and said, look, you're gone. This isn't mutual. Les Miles is now mutually parting ways because we told him he's out. And they took the easy road out in saying they mutually parted ways.
So let me ask you about the language in this contract. I did find that interesting. We're going to get to LSU's part of this here in just a second, because I don't know that Ed Orgeron is even in the clear down there just yet. He might be, he might not be, but he obviously, his name has been tied to this program, and some of the players underneath him are still in hot water for some stuff that's going on. But let me ask you about the language. I'm going to read this, so bear with me for a second while I look off screen here. And I'm reading this word for word from a report on ESPN.com. According to a copy of Miles' employment contract with Kansas, the university would have, quote, just...
Well, JB froze for a second. I'm assuming he's going with the university would have just cause to fire Les Miles. And of course they would have just cause to fire Les Miles because of what he has done in the past. This is enough to wipe out that contract. It's more than enough to say we're going to fire you with cause here and say we're not going to have to pay you. JB, you broke up there for a second, but I'm assuming that's exactly where you were going.
Right. So yeah, no, I noticed that I broke up. I apologize for that. I want to read the rest of this here real quick as well, if we have a quick second. Another clause in the contract that defines just cause is quote, participation in by head coach of any act, situation, or occurrence, or any conduct which in athletics of KU's judgment brings head coach and or KU into public disrepute, embarrassment, contempt, or ridicule. That's not saying it has to happen at Kansas. All it's saying is it has to bring the head coach or Kansas into public disrepute, embarrassment, contempt, or ridicule. So it's a very broad stroke in the contract of what, quote, just cause would be. So my question is, did anybody at Kansas in negotiating this deal have any fear that something in Les Miles' past could follow him there?
So according to Jeff Long, he said he had not seen that report. I immediately jumped on that and I said, for his sake, I hope he's telling the truth. It's hard to believe that someone does due diligence in a hiring process and someone vets fully in a hiring process and misses something like this. But that's what Jeff Long said, that he did not know this. So is the wording of the contract because there was fear of something in the past, or is that the wording of a typical contract? Because if something comes up in any walk of life, look, you can use Mickey Callaway right now in Major League Baseball, right? It's not as though what he did with the current employer, it's the pattern of what he did in the past. And that's pushing him out. And that's the same thing here. I mean, regardless of the language in that contract, what Les Miles has done in his past that was covered up was worthy of firing once, enough worthy that Oliva recommended him to be fired, and it's worthy of being fired still. It's worthy of not being able to be in a position of power where you can manipulate your position of power. So regardless of how the exact wording of that contract is laid out, I think this is something that would easily absolve any university or any employer of having to pay someone any type of a buyout if you're going to fire them and move on from them.
As it pertains to LSU, if you look at the pattern in Baton Rouge, I don't personally think it's very good in that athletics department. And I've always, for whatever reason, really respected Louisiana State University. I don't know, maybe it's an SEC thing. I have no idea. but I've always had a lot of respect, certainly for their baseball program. Maybe that's where it started with their baseball program. I have no idea, but hold on here, and at the end of the day, facts are facts, and I get that. There should, in my opinion, there should never be any type of media pressure or social media pressure or public pressure. Facts are facts. If the facts are on your side, stand by them, prove them, and then move on. Right? You're innocent until proven guilty. But at LSU, you've got this situation. You already mentioned that Joe Oliva wanted to fire him in 2013. That didn't happen. Since then, there have been other incidents in the football program under Ed Orgeron, Darius Geis involved in one. I forget the other young man, his name. I think there's a couple guys who've been involved in some of these type situations down there where there are very raunchy details about some of these accusations having to do with some of these players. And the fallout has, to this point, hasn't been significant. I don't know exactly how much of that can be truthfully tied to Ed Orgeron. I don't have the answer. I know I've seen things, but I don't know if it's true. All right. But then you bring in Will Wade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Will Wade was on a wiretap, Darren. I mean, and we're not stupid. We've been doing this a long time. And again, you got to be able to prove it, but we're not stupid. We know exactly what he was talking about in those wiretaps. We know what the language is. Come on, man. We've all been in sports a long time. And so it just feels like, you just went through this whole FBI investigation and hoops. You got what Tennessee's going through up there in football right now. And there are these level 1 violations termed by the NCAA as lack of institutional control. If you can prove these things in Baton Rouge, what is more of lack of institutional control than all of that combined?
It's a good question. If you lump all of that stuff in together, I mean, there hasn't been much that's been proven on the Orgeron football side, and I guess you can say, there hasn't been a ton proven on the basketball side under Will Wade, but we do have those wiretaps. I mean, you can easily come to the conclusions that you want. Is it lack of institutional control? I'm not sure. I'm still puzzled at how there's been a lack of any type of accountability and punishment for the basketball program. But I mean, if you lay things out and you want to establish a pattern, there is a pattern, right? I mean, you've got Miles, you've got the money issues, it was OBJ paying guys down there for LSU. You've got what's going on with Will Wade. So you get the sense, it feels like, we use the word optics a lot. It feels like the athletic department is brushing things aside that it can brush aside and moving forward because of wins. And that's, there have been a couple of prominent reporters that have been all about this. Nicole Auerbach has been certainly a very loud and public voice in it, saying, look, the handling of women is not something that gets you fired. Losing is what gets you fired. And it's a culture within sports. So this isn't just an LSU thing. It's maybe more of an entire maybe college sports is a better way to put it. But what it all comes down to is winning. And Frank Martin was referencing that in some ways when he was talking this morning. You're not going to cheat to get there. It's going to take you a little bit longer. The bottom line is winning. It's always been winning. It's always going to be winning. There has to be some way to balance that out and say, look, even though you're winning, you're not a good guy and you're not a fit here and you got to go away. Until we get to that point, we're going to keep having these conversations.
Well, I think what you just said is spot on. It's win at all costs. And if you think we've done something wrong, prove it. And there's a part of me that respects that. There's a part of not to the extent of
certain levels.
Yeah, not like sexual assault and things like that. That's not what I'm saying. But when it comes to like Will Wade or some other things that have happened, it's like, look, you might be able to accuse me of cheating all you want to, but you better be able to prove it. And if not, as long as we're winning games around here, we're not making any changes. So there's a part of me that respects that, because there's also a part of me, and I think you and everybody else in this world at times, we see things happen just in general, not even in sports, just across the country where a change will be made because of public pressure or a media report. And you're like, well, but that's not proven yet. Like, well, hold on, let's make sure that that's true before we make the change. LSU certainly isn't giving in to any of that. They haven't. And they've proven that they're not going to unless there's a a major change in leadership down there. And when I say change in leadership, I'm not talking about the athletics director. I'm talking about above him. You're talking about presidents. You're talking about board of trustee members. You're talking about those type folks who make real decisions with real cash, who say, we're not doing this here, and here is why. But yeah, I think the win at all cost model is alive and well down there. If there's truth in some of this stuff, you got to go. There's no doubt about it. Right. And some of it, when you break the law, you should be prosecuted for it. But until you prove it, I don't know what we can do. But certainly other schools who have been, like Tennessee, recruiting violations, and they're hammering themselves. LSU certainly hasn't done that.
No, LSU hasn't done that at all. They are almost, the sense is they're waiting to see what the NCAA is going to do. And that's going to be a really big telltale sign of what's to come, deciding with the NCAA, figuring out how they're going to handle, first of all, Will Wade. Second of all, what now is maybe a pattern down in Baton Rouge.
That's different from what Ray Tanner did and going to Indianapolis and sitting down with them about Lamont Evans and his role in PJ Dozier's signing with an agent, trying to give him money, all those type things. And that's what helped South Carolina get out of that mess, because it had nothing to do with Frank Martin, which that has now been proven. And we're going to talk to Gene Sapakoff about that. One of the things that we haven't necessarily got to a bunch, though, was the Rush Probst. What do we call these? Tapes? Are they undercover tapes?
I would say leaked audio. Yeah.
I mean, who recorded it?
I'm not sure who recorded it. That it was, I believe, at a Touchdown Club type of meeting when he was speaking. But I'm not sure who actually had the recording.
What kind of idiot do you have to be to speak like that at a Touchdown Club meeting?
A Rush Probst type of idiot. I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing in Rush Probst's background or current situation. He's already being investigated for doing things illegally at his current job. So there's nothing that comes out of his mouth that I'm going to give any credence to, and it's already been refuted by both Georgia and Alabama, as you would expect.
Well, as I mentioned yesterday, so for those that don't know who Rush Probst is, Rush Probst, that if you ever watched the show 2-A-Days on MTV. He was the head coach at Hoover High School in Hoover, Alabama. He got in a bunch of trouble there. Since then, he's moved on. He's been in trouble since as well. And he's not a stand-up guy. I would say he's not a very credible guy either. But at the same time, Darren, for a guy that understands how to break the rules in sports like he does, I would have this gut feeling that he probably knows who the rule breakers are in college football. I mean, he's had many, many talented kids recruited out of Hoover High School and every stop that he's been to, basically. He knows the underbelly of the sport. And when he says things like he said, I mean, he was talking about Saban specifically only deals with Paul Bear Bryant Jr., who I think is living down around Mobile or something like that. And there is a cash flow pipeline basically that runs through that neck of the woods, that area of the state of Alabama, that is able to get kids paid who go to Alabama. I don't know who. He didn't mention names. He didn't necessarily mention specifics, but that's the setup. There's a guy who Kirby Smart is associated with in Georgia, a very similar situation. This guy basically claims that he knows the ins and outs of these two very different scenarios and situations, but very the same, because Nick Saban is the god of college football, and Kirby Smart is one of the, I don't know, 5 or 6 coaches out there. Probably most visible in the sport. You could claim he's one of the best if you want to, but he's Kirby Smart. He's the coach at Georgia, and these are guys. Kirby Smart coached under Nick Saban in Alabama, so I'm not going off the railway here. I'm not trying to fly off the radar. But if there is something fishy that happened at Alabama, Kirby Smart probably saw it under Nick Saban and understood how that works, and you're able to bring that over to Georgia. I don't know. I don't know. That is, don't quote me on that. I have no insight into any of this. I'm just speculating here. But at the end of the day, here's the question. Are these comments, are these accusations, that's what they are, worthy of being looked into? And if so, Who looks into them?
No. The answer is no, because if Rush Probst is the only, let's call it evidence, which is a very broad use of the term, that's not enough to go by. I mean, a policeman or an office can't get a warrant based on Rush Probst's opinion or based on Rush Probst's words coming out of his mouth, because there is absolutely no trust and faith in anything that he says. And if you go listen to those tapes, if you listen to the audio, and it's out there, it's very, very easy to find. He doesn't even sound sure of himself. It's almost as though he's trying to find the right words. It's almost as though he's trying to convince somebody else of something that's happening in order to validate another thing, maybe something that he is doing. It doesn't sound like this big sweeping accusation. It almost sounds passive in the way that he went about the conversation. I think there's nothing to this. I say that understanding that, of course, there's an underbelly of college football. Of course, money gets exchanged to some degree. Am I going to sit here and say that there's this pipeline for Nick Saban and that Nick Chubb got 3 different $60,000 payments to come back to Georgia? That's another thing Probst said. So Chubb got $180,000 instead of going to the draft to come back to Georgia. Why would I believe Rush Probst? There's nothing in his past or present that would make me believe a word that comes out of his mouth unless someone else can step up and say, here's proof. I've got concrete evidence for you. And then I'll say, okay, fine. Until then, I don't give it any credence whatsoever.
Unless somebody, I don't disagree with that. Unless somebody can corroborate what he's saying, I don't know that this conversation bears any more.
No, it's not going to go anywhere. Alabama's Nick Chubb has called it fake news because that's an easy thing to say these days.
Yeah.
Alabama, I believe, has refuted it. Certainly, Georgia, they don't even need to say that much. They could have easily just let it lie, because if Rush Probst is attached to something, that thing stinks. There are flames coming from that area over there. So if it's coming from over there, why even acknowledge it? Just let it go burn over there. It's going to go away. Probst he's done it before. He'll do it again. He's going to keep digging that own grave.
I've done it before, and I'll do it again as well. That's Eat at DB's Cheesesteaks, dbscheesesteaks.com for their entire menu. Make sure you have downloaded a delivery app. They'll drop it off at your doorstep. It is the best cheesesteak in town. You voted them number 1 in the low country. dbscheesesteaks.com for their entire menu. Try my favorite, the buffalo chicken cheesesteak. All right, when we return, Gene Sapakoff with the Post and Courier. We're going to talk to him about Frank Martin's future at South Carolina. Frank had some major comments this morning, his most significant comments since, or at least over the last few weeks, pertaining to his future with South Carolina basketball. And what is the better program, Clemson football or Gamecock women's basketball? In context, of course, different sports. We understand that. Much, much more with Gene as well. Hang tight. The JB and Goldwater Show. We'll be right back.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Up.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. Whatever you got planned this week, cancel it. 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours at whatever price it takes. I repeat, 72 new Volkswagens will be sold in the next 72 hours. To the first 72 car buyers interested in saving up to $6,000 on a new Volkswagen for 3 days only. Every new Volkswagen and pre-owned vehicle at our bottom line price. Direct to the public, regardless of profit. Qualified purchases with interest-free financing for 60 months, and all trade-ins will be accepted. Interested parties should arrive early for best selection. You will not find a lower price anywhere in the country. 72-hour Volkswagen clearance, savings up to $6,000, 3 days only at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Up.
$16.66 per month per thousand borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax tag includes $499.50 administration fee subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at Mcfadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about Mcfadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
Guys, spring is finally in the air. You know what that means? Basketball in its home stretch. March Madness promotion at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clemens Ferry Road. From now until the end of the tournament, $5 Sweetwater pints. That's right. Every Sweetwater, just $5 at Dog and Duck, Park West, Bell Hall, and their Clemens Ferry location. Plus, baseball spring training, college baseball, spring football. It's all available at Dog and Duck's 3 locations in Mount Pleasant.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and online.
I've been from Tucson to Cocaine to Hatchapeta, Tonopah.
Final segment of the afternoon on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Darren, Jamie, and Gene Sapakoff with the Post and Courier. What's up, my friend?
How's it going, guys?
Well, we're good. I'm from the home office this week. Darren's from the home office. I'm trying to make sure my internet doesn't crap out on me. So outside of that, everything's fine.
All right, and I'm from the home office, so hey, you know,
It's Gene. It's the way of the world.
Triple Crown.
Everyone's testing out these remote broadcast type things, so we figured we'd jump on that train. We're trying to expand, so welcome to our remote broadcast of what 1, 2, 3 different guys in 3 locations.
That's right. Yeah.
Now award-winning program.
You're welcome.
Now I see why guys like Mike Morgan and others who are trying to call college basketball games from home have their fears of doing so because it can go wrong in a hurry. All right, Gene. I do look. Let's start off with Frank Martin. This morning he spoke about his future at South Carolina, and he said he called it home. He said this is where I want to be, and he went into great detail and a lot of depth about his tenure there, his future. I'm sure you heard most of those comments and have certainly seen them afterwards in context. But that didn't sound like a guy to me who's looking to hit the reset button somewhere else and maybe go to another rebuild or another program in better shape than South Carolina. He seems to know exactly what's wrong, and it looks like he wants the opportunity to stay in Columbia and fix it, and I think fix it rather quickly. What did you make of his comments this morning?
What I made of it was that I like Frank Martin, and I think he's a sincere guy. And what the hell else is he going to say? I mean, he's not going to say that he wants to leave or that New Mexico sounds really cool or maybe the Santa Clara job will come open or something. I mean, he wants to either stay at South Carolina and get a year added to his contract or have them give him $3.5 million to walk away. And I think it's going to be an interesting decision for Ray Tanner, but more than that, that call is going to be made above Ray, I think, by Bob Castellan and some other influential people at the university.
Well, and he referenced that this morning. Let me ask it this way. If Frank Martin wasn't passionate about wanting to stay at South Carolina, he knows this isn't he's not going to get some opportunity. Hey, look, Frank, if you can get it fixed in the next 3 or 4 years, you can stick around. He knows that's not the case. You better get it fixed next year. He understands the situation here. I think we all could probably agree on that. But in knowing that, if he knows that and he understands that, and he wanted to be more PC about it, why not just say, I'm not going to comment on anything until after the season? Why go in depth like he did for a few minutes?
Because I think Frank Martin is very smart when it comes to how the politics of this goes, and that he knows he is right on the edge and he is lobbying his rear end off for that job. And if he can convince anybody that has some influence, he's going to do it. And that includes the fan base and Twitterverse.
It's a good point. When he says, we fixed it before, I know what's wrong with this program, we can fix it again. We've watched him build South Carolina to new expectations, Gene. I mean, obviously the expectation every year is not to go to the Final Four. We all get that. But there was an expectation after they went to the Final Four that maybe 2 out of every 5 years, 3 out of every 6 or 7 years, maybe 3 out of every 8 years, they would be at least dancing in March. We've watched him build this. These players all came back from last year. Does this seem like a quick fix as possible if Frank Martin is retained?
It depends on what comes back next year. But I'll tell you, the whole puzzle, the enigma that is the South Carolina basketball season of 2021 is that on the floor, those guys that take the floor in the starting lineup when that team's healthy is a good basketball team.
Well, they are good basketball. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw him. What happened at Florida? You saw him even more recently in the game when they won at Georgia by 20 or something like that. They just didn't ever get that rhythm consistently, and it wasn't just inconsistent. It was few and far between. Now, the excuse, okay, we had 3 COVID positives. Our coach since last spring has had COVID twice, and it's been all the breaks have gone against us. I've already written in the Post and Courier and talked to you guys about, I mean, I think he deserves a mulligan for this year, and that he's absolutely not just on the hot seat, but on a sizzling seat going into next year.
Mike Morgan said something a couple of weeks ago on our program, and I agree with him. I think Darren agreed with him as well. He said, when it comes to coaching searches, one of the most overrated statements out there is, well, who are you going to get? Who are you going to get that's better than this guy? He said that's just not true. I mean, there's always somebody out there. There are always a pool of candidates out there that can be better than that guy. Now, there are certain situations, but this one isn't comparable. I mean, Will Muschamp was not an upgrade from Steve Spurrier, obviously, but there was a change that was coming no matter what, and that's the best they could get at that time. If Carolina forced a change, the question that I have for you is there an identifiable group of young coaches in college basketball that would be considered? Is there a group of names that we could just roll off the tongue right now and say, hey, these are guys that you should keep an eye on, whether it's South Carolina or anybody else?
First of all, Mike Morgan is very smart and good, and that's an astute statement that he made. And I've said the same thing before. Basketball is different than football. That's a better question in football. Who are you going to get? There's not usually as many identifiable coaches in football. Football is a very tight regional recruiting thing, your state and the border states. Basketball recruiting is not like that. There are lots of good basketball coaches, many good candidates. South Carolina went afar to get Frank Martin, Darren Horn, a little closer for Eddie Fogler and Dave Odom and George Felton. But I wonder if anyone in the state of Alabama, and I mean even a casual basketball fan from Mobile to Huntsville and all in between, had heard much about Nate Oates before Alabama hired him. And now he's the SEC Coach of the Year, and the Tide isn't just going to be in the NCAA tournament. They have a decent shot to get to the Final Four.
Gene, I brought this up last week, I think. I mean, in speaking of Nate Oates, right? You look at Arkansas and you see Musselman. You see what Underwood's doing at Illinois. You see a lot of guys, mid-major guys, who have then had a ton of success there, translated that into a lot of success at their next stop. So is there a characteristic that separates a guy like Musselman and Nate Oates from a guy like Darren Horn?
That's a tough one. I think with Darren Horn, look, one thing really cool, you can't lie about what you've written before in the Post and Courier because it's in there in the archives. But go back at my column, if you've got the archives access or whatever, the Post and Courier. I didn't like the Darren Horn hire from the get-go because I thought he had one good year and at Marquette, and that they thought they overreacted to that. So I want to see a little bit of a track record. I like the young coach, but it's got to be a little bit more of a track record than one good year. And then I want to see tremendous energy, recruiting, and a clean program. And that's what I'm looking for. Energy, recruiting, personality, clean program. And frankly, there's 2 or 3 dozen of those kind of guys that could fit in at South Carolina. And, regional ties just don't matter. I mean, Greg Marshall, from Winthrop to Wichita State, and John Kress from New York City to the College of Charleston, and so on and so on. John Wooden from Indiana to UCLA, going way back. I mean, it just doesn't matter that much in college basketball, the regional ties, as that seems to be so important in football.
Hey, Frank McGuire at South Carolina. Look what he did.
Yeah.
He turned it into New York South in Columbia. That was the only history they had outside of the 2-year run of Eddie Fogler and the Final Four run for Frank Martin just a few years ago now up in Columbia. Gene Sapakoff on Twitter at Sapakoff, of course, with the Post and Courier. All right, Gene. So you mentioned last week, I think it was last week, that you had stolen an idea of ours to write in the Post and Courier, but we didn't view it that way. We Darren and I looked at this as great minds think alike, and you are a great writer and wrote a great column about the FCS and its lack of exposure. I have another idea for you, but it comes with a question first. So maybe you can take this and run with it in the middle of July when we all have nothing to talk about in sports. In context, clearly, because the sports are different. The playoff models are or the postseason models are different. The schedules, it's all different. But in context, in this state, what is the better program currently? Clemson football or South Carolina women's basketball?
Okay, let me write this down so I can also steal this idea. Okay, what is better program? Okay, I think I got it. The better program, and I've stated this before, and I really hate to hurt any feelings, but is clearly Clemson football. And the reason is as follows. It is just much more difficult to win in football. It's much more competitive. Way more schools take it seriously than it is in women's basketball. That's not a slam at women or South Carolina's program or basketball, because the exact same thing is college baseball. That is why Clemson's 2 national championships in football are way, way, way more impressive than South Carolina's 2 in baseball.
Now, here's the real test for you. Again, coming to a column near you this July. If you could rank the greatest programs in the state of South Carolina's history, I almost wonder what you could do with that. You're talking about this run that Clemson football is on. Maybe the greatest runs for different programs in this state's history. The run that Don Staley's on with the basketball program, the Carolina baseball run, Clemson baseball, or maybe it encompasses your entire history. Maybe that's exactly what it comes down to. Coastal baseball, Winthrop basketball. I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff we could find. College of Charleston hoops. But there have been some amazing programs in this state who have all had different periods of success within those programs. But would that be fun? Is that something that you and your staff at the Post and Courier could do? Rank the greatest program by sport in the history of the state?
Now, that is a heck of an idea. And, we've done things like best coaches, which sort of translates to that. But I really like that idea, Jamie and Darren, because again, you look at the Clemson football thing, which is kind of obvious, Gamecock women's basketball, Gamecock baseball, but for degree of difficulty's sake, wow, Mike Young's run with Wofford basketball, Marshall's run with Winthrop basketball, and John Kress's run at College of Charleston basketball, and each of those 3, they won an NCAA tournament game. That's just ridiculously hard to do. And then the Coastal Baseball National Championship. Incredible. I mean, there's just a lot of great coaches, great programs, and pride in the Palmetto State and college athletics just here over the last 20 or so years. And, Steve Spurrier didn't even get to a conventional New Year's 6 bowl game, but 3 11-2 seasons, 5-0 against Clemson, 4 straight bowl wins. That was absolutely ridiculous. And I hate, I don't want to ruffle any feathers out there, but that's not going to be duplicated in a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring that in. And by the way, we're going to look forward to that column at some point in time in the next few months. Let us know when you're doing that
as well.
Yeah. No, you don't. I just like to read. I just learned to read, so I enjoy it now. Gene, it's interesting you say that about what Coach Spurrier did in that run. We were talking to Grace earlier, Grace Raynor, and I asked her about Coach Sweeney, if you know what his relationship has been. Shane Beamer has been open about his relationship with Dabo. Has Coach Sweeney spoken on that from his side? And she said it hasn't come up in a while, but it certainly did when he first got here. But he has, he's a guy who really wants South Carolina to succeed again in football for this rivalry, because it just matters so much more when they're really good, like that stretch run that the Gamecocks had. Of course, they won all those games against Clemson during that run. But when you look at this, you got Dabo and you've got Shane, that the respect that they have for each other, obviously on the field, they want to beat their brains in, and we all get that. Is there anything that leads you to believe that we could even approach where it was at one point in time in this rivalry less than a decade ago, based on the Shane Beamer hire and based on exactly where Clemson is now and probably where they're going to continue to be?
I hate to say it, but not really. And the reason is as follows. Clemson's never been better, and that they are way better than they were even when Danny Ford was winning a national title. And then, after they went on probation, he came back at the end of his Clemson run, and they won 4 straight Florida Bowl games, which when you said Florida Bowl games in the 80s, that really meant something. So this is as good as Clemson's ever been, and it's not necessarily the worst South Carolina's ever been, but they are at quite an ebb right now in terms of talent and just where they are in the SEC. I think Shane can dig them out and get them somewhat good, but he's chasing something that's kind of ridiculously good at Clemson. So it's not a fair comparison that any of the other coaches except for Muschamp has had to deal with.
Speaking of Clemson, former quarterback at Clemson, Deshaun Watson, is a free agent. Dak Prescott is not. Yesterday, he was just guaranteed, $120-something million just for putting his name on a dotted line. And that's he's going to be paid $75 million of that contract in year one, plus the $66 million that's in the signing bonus. What do you think that means for Deshaun Watson?
I mean, I think he's really going to be a wealthy young man with a really nice foundation, because he has such a big heart that a lot of people will benefit from that. But Deshaun Watson, everybody in the NFL knows is a better quarterback than Dak. And I like Dak, cool guy. Came to the Final Four to see the Mississippi State team play in the same Final Four the Gamecock women won in Dallas. But yeah, that's a good thing for Deshaun Watson. It's going to be fun to see what team he ends up with, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the Texans.
No. I wonder about the Panthers. Can the Panthers afford $75 million a year for Deshaun Watson?
A lot of rumbling there.
Yeah, I don't know, man. They're building a big old facility up there in the upstate, or not the upstate. I'd call it South Charlotte now, the Rock Hill area. I don't know that they're going to be throwing 100.
I'll tell you what right now. Do never say the word South Charlotte about Rock Hill if you're anywhere near David Kleinger, a Rock Hill native.
Did you see the Saturday Night Live on Charlotte and the gateway to Gastonia?
I did not, but that's hilarious.
The
greatest.
It went viral, man. I'll send it to you. It was about a 2.5 minute. I think it was last Saturday, not the most recent. I think it was 2 Saturdays ago, and they did like 2.5 minutes on Charlotte, and it was brilliant comedy.
That is the greatest.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, they feel. It's just another part of South Carolina. Yeah, Charlotte's a suburb of South Carolina, as is Augusta. We all know that.
South Carolina's in town tomorrow night to take on the Citadel over at the Joe. Gene, the Gamecocks are 10-0, ranked number 12 by D1Baseball.com. And the Citadel 4-6 coming into this ball game. Last year was a blowout in favor of South Carolina, but the last time in 2019, Carolina was here. They hung on by 1 run. 10-9 was the final score down at the Joe. This has been a neat in-state rivalry for a long time in baseball. I know that the Dogs would love to knock them off tomorrow night. We'll see if that can happen. But as you look at the start of the season for Carolina baseball, they've got Texas this weekend in Austin. They're not going to be undefeated forever. We all know a couple of losses are coming their way at some point in time. What have you seen out there as compared to what we've seen the last 3 or 4 years in this program? What makes you feel like maybe Gamecock baseball might be, quote, back?
There were so many positive rumblings coming out of the fall workouts and scrimmages and things like that. with all the good pitching and so many big, tall pitchers throwing really hard. And then, the sticks in the middle of the lineup, particularly Wes Clark. And they have lived up to that hype, which almost never happens, at least not early in the season. I think it's perfectly fine to be very optimistic about this South Carolina baseball team. That it is just a terrific bunch with some really intriguing guys. And I'm just absolutely fascinated with like a pitcher like Julian Bosnick, who is pretty much pitched perfectly. And now they're going to get into some really tough play with Texas and then the conference play. Top line SEC pitching, Jamie, has never been better, and that is saying something. But you look at Vanderbilt with Kumar Rocker and Leiter. I mean, they're going to be like top 5 picks in the draft, and there's going to be SEC pitchers, probably like 8 or 9 picked in the first round. It's going to be ridiculous. But South Carolina, just the start that they've had, and that Clemson series was just so impressive, and I think is going to give them confidence that will be in the back pocket and used on Sunday afternoons from here till May.
Well, I'll give you one more thing since we're good at helping you out. We had Skylar Meade on earlier. He said based on their pitch track data, and he even pointed out real stuff, not just stuff they're making up. The staff, the entire staff, is the second hardest throwing staff in the SEC.
That's something they really thought they had to improve on when Mark Kingston got there, and they have really achieved that goal. And it's really fun to watch, like recruiting goals come, to fruition. And it's interesting how, remember Steve Spurrier used to say how the baseball success rubbed off on football. Well, maybe at some point that can happen again.
It's been a run to start the year. There's no doubt. And you're right. Skylar told me last year before that season started, he said, this is a team that we think can really get going in April. It'll take time to kind of figure out everybody's roles and get folks comfortable. Coming into this year, we talked a bunch about it, and he said, no, we should be pretty good out of the gates. He was spot on. By the way, quick stat for everybody on Julian Bosnick. You know how many hits he's allowed this season? How many hits? Anybody know the answer?
1.
0.
0.
Yeah.
He hasn't allowed 1 hit.
Like I said, he's been spotless just about.
It's unbelievable. Clemson's 5-4. The College of Charleston is 3-7. 2 guys who I truly love. Monty Lee and Chad Holbrook, just wonderful people, but not off to great starts. Is that concerning in your opinion, or is it not? It's just early in college baseball and they'll get going.
I give it to Chad. He tried to schedule hard, I think they'll get better. I think that team's pretty darn good. Look at this pitcher, Ty Good, and how well he's done. I think he's got an ERA under 2. Clemson, I didn't, watch the games. I couldn't really spend time watching the games this weekend, but I followed closely and read about them and stuff. And I'll tell you, it's not an exaggeration to say they were 3 hits away from winning that series, but you've got to get those timely hits. Kieran Meredith came back. That's good, but they need to get some bats going and pretty quickly, because you don't want to get in a hole and you don't want to get the fans yapping.
What's coming up in the paper this week, Gene?
Some really cool stuff. First of all, I think it was a beautiful story that a military magnet girls basketball team from much maligned North Charleston, South Carolina, with a team of sophomores, 9th graders, and 8th graders, won a state championship. And I'm kind of taking a deep dive into how that happened and all the people responsible for that. Looking tomorrow at Clemson's chances in the ACC tournament, it's ridiculous. How about this stat? Of the top 5 seeds in the ACC basketball tournament, none of them are in the top 8 programs in terms of ACC tournament winning percentage. That's how crazy that tournament is, turned upside down. And then another column about the Tampa Bay Rays, rated by Baseball America as the top organization in minor league baseball, and how that will eventually bode well for the River Dogs.
Fantastic. Looking forward to some good River Dogs baseball getting back, no doubt. That's really looking forward to that, and certainly want to see who's going to be on the roster here in the next few weeks. Gene, we'll let you run on that note, brother. We know you've got it all covered. We thank you so much for your time as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Gene Sapakoff on Twitter at Sapakoff. All right, as we get you out of here today on this gorgeous Tuesday afternoon, it's National Meatball Day. Yeah, I love meatballs.
Dog and Duck had a meatball sub special yesterday. I don't know if it's still on today, but it's outstanding. Plus, you got the game day burger special coming up tomorrow with Dog and Duck.
The brown bag, right?
Yeah.
It's also National Crab Meat Day, and it's National Barbie Day. And I love this phrase. It's National Get Over It Day.
That's a good day.
It's a great
Get over
day.
it, man.
That's right. Thanks to Gene Sapakoff, Grace Raynor, and Skylar Meade for joining us on our program today. Thanks to Darren Goldwater and to all of you for watching and listening to our program. Big day tomorrow with J.C. Shermer. Going to try to check in with Tony Skoll tomorrow as well. And we'll see you then at noon, the JB and Goldwater Show.